Hello everyone and welcome to week 13 of English 120. Sorry, there we go. This week I'd like you to begin by watching this lecture as usual. I do provide lots more information in the lecture than you can get from just looking at the slides. We're going to continue to read Charmian Kittredge London's book, The Log of the Snark. Read pages 209 to 238 this week, and you'll take part in the discussion. You're going to complete Module 13, which is using sources effectively, and take the quiz by Thursday at 11:59 p.m. Also, this week, I would like you to write your introductions to your research papers, and I'm going to go over that in this lecture, but it's due by Sunday at 11:59 p.m. A little disclaimer, though, you are not allowed to turn in your introduction before you turn in your body paragraph. So far, we've only had 4 people turn in their body paragraphs, and I'm very concerned because every day that it's late, you lose a point. You don't want to lose points on these, okay? So please make sure you turn in your body paragraphs by as soon as possible, and then turn in your introduction by Sunday at 11:59 p.m. This week we are heading to American Samoa in the Log of the Snark. This is a Wikipedia page that tells you a little bit about the history of American Samoa, and it's important to look that up because the time when Charmian and Jack are visiting is right when America has just acquired this part of Samoa. So it's an interesting thing to look up and understand. So it'll make more sense, some of the scenes that happen if you know that background. So just do a quick read over of the background information. Robert Louis Stevenson was somebody who lived in Samoa. He's pictured right in the middle here. That's him right there. And if you have been following what's going on with our college, we just did a play, Treasure Island, which is a book that Robert Louis Stevenson wrote. Now, this is a link to the museum that's in Apia in Samoa, on the island of Apia. There's also a local museum in St. Helena on Robert Louis Stevenson because he did actually spend time in the St. Helena area, and so they developed a museum there. If you're looking for extra credit, you can go up Valley and tour the museum, post a few pictures and a short response in our discussion post this week, and you'll get 10 points extra credit. And it's unlimited. All of you can do it if you'd like. Here's some more background. On page 217, she refers to a poem by William Wordsworth called "The World is Too Much With Us." And here is someone reading that poem so you can hear it. There's a reference to Falstaff. This was a Shakespearean character who's fat, vain, and boastful, and he's really cowardly. He's a knight who lives off borrowed or stolen money. So it's not a good thing to be called a Falstaff. And she mentions him on page 219. Jack's nickname for Charmian is, he calls her the Kid because he thinks her curiosity and her love of adventure is kind of like childlike. So he calls her the Kid on page 219. There's a reference to the Greek god Apollo on page 219, and it'd be good to look him up. But he is the kind of the ideal of youth. Nosegays are tiny little bouquets of flowers, mentioned on page 216. Edmund Goss, there's some information here on Edmund Goss for you to look up. Jack London gives a lecture on Samoa called Revolution, and if you're interested in what that is, there's a link here. And then beer and Skittles is a phrase that just means good times, just so you know. It's not the Skittles that you're thinking about, the rainbow of color and flavor. Here is a really intricately carved, beautiful Samoan war canoe. It's really one of the amazing art forms of this area. So this week, your discussion questions, as usual, please post your own response by Friday at 11:59 p.m. But don't forget, you need to also respond to at least 3 of your peers' posts by Sunday at 11:59 p.m. That's part of it. And those of you who aren't doing that, you're losing points every week. It's important that this is a discussion. The idea is that we're going to interact with one another about these topics. So the first question is, what happens when the Snark enters Pago Pago Harbor? And how does this affect Jack's, quote, sailor pride? When did Americans begin to have a military presence in Pago Pago? And you'll get that information by looking that up on the Wikipedia page that I gave you the page for. How is their stay in Tutila different from their stays on most of the other islands they have visited, and why? When did Robert Louis Stevenson live in Vailima? Why is the Road of Loving Hearts named the Road of Loving Hearts? What does Tustila mean? What kind of relationship did Robert Louis Stevenson have with the Samoans? And it's important to pay attention to that. You'll get a lot of information off of the link to the museum on Apia. You could also get that information if you went to the Robert Louis Stevenson Museum in St. Helena. How did Stevenson die? Why are Jack and Charmian so moved at Robert Louis Stevenson's grave? What is the significance of the Bible verse written on his grave? Why is it a big deal to Charmian that Joshua Slocum visited Apia? Who was he, and how did he inspire Charmian? Here's another extra credit moment. If you get this right, you get an extra point this week. Where did she first encounter him, and who works in the plantations? So where did Charmian first encounter him? Just a hint, it's mentioned in the lecture that I gave on Charmian at the House of Happy Walls. It was a required thing that you were supposed to watch earlier this semester, but perhaps you forgot, or perhaps you forgot what I said. So if you get a chance, go back, check it out, and you'll get an extra point if you mention it. Who works in the plantations in Apia? And what does that mean for the Samoans? That's an important point, because remember, colonization means that these huge plantations are opening up, and in some cases, the people of the island are enslaved in the plantations, and in some cases, it's other people. And this changes the relationship between the people of the island and the people of the plantations. All right, that's it on Log of the Snark this week. Your module this week is using sources effectively. So please click through each of the content pages. You'll begin with using sources effectively, the Bradford Researcher, Chapter 15. Read through the sections that they ask you to read through. Then watch the video, Researched Writing, Integrating Sources. Then read the page, Integrating Sources from the Harvard College Writing Program. And then read through Professor Yanover's Guide to Integrating Quotes. It's a slide deck. Then at the end, you'll see there's a quiz, as usual. You only have 2 attempts to take it, and it's due this Thursday at 11:59 p.m. All right, so for those of you who have pruned in your body paragraph, the big chunk of your paper that you've started working on, now we need to work on framing how the reader gets introduced to that content that you've worked so hard on creating. And we're going to do that by talking about introductions. And your introductions are due this week. Next week, we'll talk about conclusions and flow. And then, after spring break, your first main draft is due. And that's expected to be a completed draft. And we will have conferences about them. I won't be giving you feedback. I'll be giving you feedback via conferences. So start thinking about the week of April 23rd when you might want to meet and talk about your paper. Always office hours are the best times. If that doesn't work for you, though, we can figure out other times to talk on the phone. You are not required to come to campus. Then the following week, we'll have a self-review and then a peer review workshop. And then your final draft will be due. Just a note, we will have a final in this class based on the Log of the Snark. So if you've fallen behind in reading, please make sure that you catch up, because it will not be pleasant to have to try to go back and relearn all of that at the end of the semester. All right, let's talk a little bit about drafting your introduction. Your introduction for a paper this long should be at least 1 to 2 paragraphs long. So that's like, I want you to remember that an academic paragraph is actually 7 to 12 sentences long. Sorry, that should say sentences. So it should be, you know, a page and a half at least. You're going to begin your introduction paragraph by grabbing your reader with a hook. You're going to begin with a quotation. And remember, whenever you use a quotation, you have to introduce it, then you have to give the quotation, then you have to interpret it. Or you can begin with a question or an anecdote that sets the mood for the paper that you've written. You want to think about so you've already written your body paragraphs. Think about what mood you want to set with your audience. Like what exactly do you want them to feel, you know? How do you want them to go into this argumentative research paper? You are arguing something in this paper, okay? Then you're going to introduce your topic. You're going to define your topic and explain the history of your topic. So you're going to define your topic by telling us what is child labor, or what is, you know, whatever your topic is. And then you'll provide a history of your topic. What happened, you know, so if you're writing about the history of the 1906 earthquake, what happened on the day of the 1906 earthquake, and how has this affected how people respond to earthquakes differently to this day? You know, take us through the details. This is the meat of your introduction. It should be long. It shouldn't be brief. We should really understand the background of the topic. And I want you to assume that your reader doesn't have a background in your topic. Then you're going to frame your argument and then clearly state your thesis statement. Your thesis statement is your answered research question, okay? So you're going to tell us the topic and your the view that you're taking on that topic, what you're arguing about that topic. It needs to be specific, it needs to be clear, and this is the sentence you're going to spend the most time on in your on your paper. So please note, if you think this is an easy assignment this week, you are wrong, okay? I'm sorry to say so, but you need to spend time on your thesis statement. If you have questions, go back to pages 249 to 253 in the Bedford Researcher for details on how to write an effective introduction, but there is an entire chapter on writing a thesis statement. If you are confused, you can always come in and talk to me. You can shoot me an email, and we can discuss how to make your thesis statement better. All right, once you have that developed, it is due on Sunday at 11:59 p.m. Just a few reminders. Your introduction should be in MLA format with a left-hand header and a right-hand header. It should be in Times New Roman, 12-point font. And please make sure you spell check and proofread your document. That's it for this week, you guys. I will have office hours on Tuesdays and Thursday from 11 to 12:30 and from 1:30 to 3. I hope to see some of you there. Also, there are 2 other extra credit opportunities coming up this Saturday, and I will post this in the this week's summary. This Saturday there is a poetry crawl in downtown Napa where I will be reading at Book Mine on Pearl Street in Napa at 5 o'clock on Saturday, April 13th. I'm reading with Nan Cohen and Jeremy Benson, and Jeremy Benson is the current poet laureate of Napa County. If you show up, you have to please come up and say hello. And then afterwards, you need to write up a 1-page response paper that tells me what you learned about, you know, the poetry that was written. And I will definitely read a few Jack and Charmian poems if you guys come. Also, I'll be reading on April 30th on campus at in the community room next to the library from 12:30 to 1:30 on April 30th. If you attend, I'll be reading with Kathleen Winter, another professor, and Gary Silva, also a former poet laureate of Napa County. We'll be reading from 12:30 to 1:30. If you come, you need to say hi, and then you need to write up a 1-page response paper that you email me within a week. If you do that, you get 10 points extra credit. Lots of extra credit available to you. If you have questions, please let me know. Otherwise, I will see you guys online.